All right. Well, those of us who remain will continue talking today about Song of Solomon. Um, we. I'm sorry. Did I miss?
She just got married last week. I told her to get ready.
Oh, well. It's like, boy, I wish I'd. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's like, I wish I'd heard this ahead of time. No. We had. I don't know if those of you who may recall, we spent 20 minutes talking about a documentary last week, and we had such a good time with that documentary that Debbie and I have just dived into another one. Yes, this is the one about Hillsong, but we haven't finished it, so we'll save that for another time when we're talking about that. I did want the only thing I wanted to add to that, and because this, as far as this Bill Gothard thing, the Institute in Basic Life Principles, one of the things that one of the social media feeds that I was following was commenting on this, and this is one of the great things about the various social media, Twitter especially. Twitter is great fun at times, and one of the persons commenting said that one of the things you really want to do is rather than look at something like that, this thing, and say and ask yourself or and dismiss it and say, well, we're nothing like that. It's better to look at it and say, well, how are we like this, and make corrections if they need to be corrected. And I say that because in the course of looking up other stuff, does anybody remember Roger Simon? He used to write for the Chicago Sun-Times years ago, but he used to write a column for the Chicago Sun-Times, and he would write a column every once in a while that was called "Things I Learned While Looking Up Other Things," and it would just be a series of like short things that he discovered while So I was looking up other things, and one of the things that I discovered was that a previous pastor, not Pastor Don, but Pastor Sinclair, who was the longtime pastor before Pastor Don, was at one time the secretary treasurer of the Institute in Basic Youth Conflicts. That he was so this church, given that the pastor of the church was on the board there, was inextricably linked in one way or another with that. Not currently, but I mean in our past we have. And so it is one of those kind of deals to say, okay, well, that's our people. And then that's one of the things that was so, I don't know, annoying or interesting about the Bill Gothard thing was that it's like, hey, I know those people. I mean, that's my people. The Hillsong one is a little easier for us to watch because it's like, there's no way I would be a part of that kind of thing. This guy has way too many tattoos for me. But be that as it may. But that's it. I'm going to get into Song of Solomon, Song of Songs, Canticles, call it what you will. But first, today is June 11th, and today is Anne Neville's birthday. Speaking of great love stories, Anne Neville, you all recall, had been married to Edward IV, and when Edward IV was killed, she married the Duke of Gloucester, who later became known as Richard III. Richard III, one of Shakespeare's great villains, a horse, my kingdom for a horse, and one of the great love stories, and I use that word quite loosely. If you've ever seen the play Richard III, which is one of Shakespeare's really, really good plays, it opens at the funeral of Anne Neville's husband, at which point Richard III woos her. And he convinces her to marry him. And, and at the end he gets up, and after having won her, turns, and this was ever woman this way won, was something,
Wooed, yeah.
thus wooed, was ever woman this way won, kind of thing. And because everybody knows that Richard III is a rat, and you're watching this and you're thinking, why on earth is this woman falling for him? And it's probably because she did not read Song of Solomon, That's probably what it was. But be that as it may. It was on this date in 1742 that Benjamin Franklin invented the Franklin stove. I know, what is a Franklin stove? Well, it was a stove that utilized air currents to, they were, usually you'd think there's a fireplace and you would have a fire and then heat would come from the fire and, smoke would go up the chimney. Well, they figured out that if you can make the chimney longer, the longer the chimney is, the more heat is let into the room. And so the Franklin stove was a way to use air drafts coming in from under the stove, and it's all, it wasn't the best design. It was an improvement over previous stoves, and it's really important, not necessarily because of the technological advantage of it, but it kind of put Ben Franklin on the map in terms of being a technical genius kind of guy. People go, oh, that's the guy that created the stove. And so for years and years, Ben Franklin was known as, oh, this is the guy that, the stove creator. It didn't really sell all that well, but people talk about the Franklin stove, and that's what it was. On this date in 1860, English clergyman Baden Powell died. Baden Powell was an English clergyman who argued that it was atheistic to believe in miracles. I don't know the logic there, but that was just the conclusion of it. He was a fairly liberal for the time. He's better known because it was his son, Robert Baden Powell, who started the Boy Scouts, created the Boy Scouts of America. And Robert Baden Powell's son, I can't remember his name, what his first name was, but he actually left England and moved to Ottawa, Illinois, and lived in Ottawa, Illinois. And in fact, there is a Boy Scout museum in Ottawa, Illinois, that was founded by Robert Baden Powell's son. So, but he died in 1860. In 1876, Rutherford B. Hayes was nominated to be the Republican candidate for the presidency, leading to the election of 1876, which is the grandfather of all corrupt presidential elections. Now, for anybody who wants to argue that there was some improprieties over the election of 2020 or 2016 or 2000 or 1960, go back to 1876. Now that was a corrupt election. Okay, I read a book about it once called The Fraud of the Century. It was one of those where Rutherford B. Hayes lost the popular vote. He lost the electoral. His opponent was Tilden. Tilden, and it ended up going to the House. It's the only. It was only the second time a presidential election has ever gone to the House, and there was a committee set up, and there was a bargain made, and this was the bargain that said, well, we will throw our votes behind Hayes if the Republicans end Reconstruction in the South. And they said, okay, we will give up on Reconstruction in the South. And once they gave up on Reconstruction in the South, for the price of the presidency, and of course that led into the Jim Crow era. So yay, Republicans, you have a long record of that kind of thing. But be that as it may, he was nominated on this date in 1876. 1898, Spain declared war on the U.S. For the Spanish-American War, the splendid little war, as Teddy Roosevelt called it. When the dust settled after the Spanish-American War, the U.S. was in control of Cuba and the Philippines, among a few other things. We took over the Philippines, okay? The Filipinos were not happy about that, okay? It was not, there's a popular myth that has been espoused by many people, including people in this church, that something about the American occupation of the Philippines was a pleasant, friendly thing. It wasn't. Okay, 20,000 Filipinos died over the next 4 years trying to get the Americans out. Okay, so the Americans violently took over the Philippines and held it for about 50 years. But that took place in 1898. Today is Jacques Cousteau's birthday. Anybody watch Jacques Cousteau as a kid? The Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau. Yes, today is his birthday. He was born in this state in 1910. I believe, doesn't he have a son who's still making, Adam Cousteau, I think, is still making these. Of course, his son would be, in his 70s, I would guess. But yeah, and then finally, on this date in 1962, was the only known escape from Alcatraz. Alcatraz. There are three guys, John and Clarence Anglin, and a guy named Frank Morris, actually escaped from Alcatraz. Now, they know how they escaped, and they know what they did, but they were never found. Never arrested, never found. No evidence has ever been found since that time of what happened to these three guys. So, the official word is they got off Alcatraz, but they didn't make it to the mainland. But they never found, there's no body anywhere of any of these three guys. And of course, there's a movie about it called Escape from Alcatraz. And currently, Alcatraz is a tourist destination. I suppose you could always say it always was a tourist destination. But they have a triathlon there every year called the Escape from Alcatraz Triathlon, where it starts on, because a triathlon is a race that starts with a swim. So you start at there and jump into the water and off you go, kind of thing. It's interesting. If you like that sort of thing, if you like prisons, and if you don't have to admit that you do or not, but there is the prison in Joliet that you can go tour, which is a really interesting thing. It's a really interesting tour. We did that last year. The one, if you've seen the Blues Brothers, the one where Jake and Elwood are walking out, or Jake, I don't forget which one. John Belushi is walking out. That's where you come out. You come out at that gate right there. That's the prison. It's the prison where Prison Break, the movie Prison Break, was filmed. And there was a TV show, too, that was filmed there recently. And as you do the tour, they'll point to places, and they'll go, this is where that scene was done, or this is where that scene was done. And having not seen it, I'm like, oh, I'm just more interested in the whole prison element of it. But it's right in Joliet, or it's in Crest Hill, actually. I think it's in Crest Hill. Well, it's on Archer. But it's a good time if you like that sort of thing. So, all right. Well, today we're going to talk about song. Any questions on prisons? Okay. So today we're going to talk about Song of Songs. We'll talk about the whole book. I'm going to try and get through the whole book in one short day. So, Song of Songs is a book that gets used. It's similar to it's similar to Ecclesiastes. Is that it's kind of more honored in the breach than in the observance, in a sense, in terms of paying attention to it. It generally gets ignored, except for when you want to teach young single or young married people about love. That's when this book comes out. And that's happened here. I know that's happened here because Pastor Don was using Song of Song to teach the young married couples about love and things. Because he was teaching the young married couple, even though that was not what the class was advertised. I know that because my young single son went to the class. And I don't think he's been back to an ABF since. Because he walked into this discussion of marriage stuff out of Song of Songs. And there he is, young, single. And I don't know if he was boyfriended or girlfriended at the time or not. We lose track. There have been so many. It just, there's a revolving door kind of thing. But I don't think he's been back since. But be that as it may, the title of the book, Song of Songs, it goes by a lot of different names. Song of Songs, in the old world it was called Canticles. Canticles, coming from the Latin word which means to sing, like a cantata, or the Spanish word for sing is cantar. So the canticles, like songs. But Song of Songs is a superlative. Okay, it's a song of songs. Song of Songs, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Debbie refers to me as the husband of husbands. You're supposed to, yeah, crickets. Nobody believes me, dear. I don't. Nobody believes me. I don't. Nitwit of nitwits. We're buying that. But it's that's just, this is the greatest song. This is, when you talk about Jesus being King of Kings and Lord of Lords, you say he is the greatest King, the greatest Lord. So this is the greatest song. This is the Song of Songs. Now, in the opening line says, if you have an NIV, it's translated Solomon's Song of Songs. But that first sentence doesn't mean necessarily that it's about Solomon. Okay, that could be translated Song of Songs to, for, by, or about Solomon. Okay, so similarly to Ecclesiastes, its link to Solomon is one of the reasons why it's in the canon. Why the Jewish whoever made the decision for the Jewish canon said, oh yes, that's by Solomon, or that's about Solomon, so that is worthy of being in the canon, similar to Ecclesiastes. In actuality, that's not what the text demands, but it is something that calls attention to Solomon. And in fact, to me, it's a lot easier to see the Solomon connection in Song of Solomon than it is in Ecclesiastes, although it's easier to say, okay, it's clearly not about Solomon. Okay, I mean, Solomon is a character. They talk about King Solomon, so he's clearly in there, but I don't think necessarily that's my opinion as far as looking at it, because we'll get to that when we talk about how do you look at this particular book. And so in terms of looking at it in its entirety, you say, okay, well, what is this book about? What is this book about? There are several different ways to look at it. Okay, and I'm just listing some of them. Okay, I mean, Hill and Walton in their guide to the Old Testament survey book lists 7, and I'm only giving you 5 here. But the first one is this: it's a story about Solomon. Okay, this is the story about Solomon. It's Solomon writing a story about this girl that he really, really likes, or this love story between Solomon and this girl. Okay, again, given the way Solomon is referred to in the book, and given the nature of the book as a love story, which I'm going to get to later, that's clearly a huge element of the book, and given the fact of what we know about Solomon, it's hard to believe that Solomon was that sensitive, that romantic a guy. You kind of lose it after the 3rd or 4th, 100th wife. I got to believe. It's kind of hard to be that, but so I don't necessarily buy that it's about Solomon, although okay, you want to say it's about Solomon? All right, Another thing is to say, and this was a very common way to look at it for the longest time, is that it's an allegory about God and Israel. Okay, it's an allegory about God and Israel, that it pictures the love that God has for his people. Okay, and that for a long period of time, that was how the book was uniquely looked at. Certainly in the first 300 or 400 years of the Christian era, that was how it was looked at. And actually it was transferred into, in the Christian era, it went into the next thing. It's an allegory about Christ and the church. So there are people who will look at the Song of Songs and say, well, this is about this, this is how God loves the church, or how Jesus loves the church. And and when we talk about an allegory, an allegory is simply, it's a story that it's put together, the details are all put together to give you some bigger lesson. It's like Pilgrim's Progress is the best example of an allegory. Okay, the details don't really matter. As far as, is there really somebody named Pilgrim who went on a journey and went into the Slough of Despond? Is there really a place? No, there isn't. It's all made up. It doesn't matter. The point is to show this pilgrim, we are all pilgrims. The guy's name is Pilgrim. He's progressing. We all progress. That's kind of the most obvious allegory. And the details. Did Solomon really do all of it? No, it doesn't really matter because it's just talking about love. Okay, that's kind of what it's an allegory. The trouble with going too far into the allegory direction is there are some people that want to do that like to the whole Bible. Does it really matter that Jesus died? No, it doesn't really matter that Jesus died. It just really shows our overcoming the opposition of the world. He didn't really die. It's just a story there to illustrate how we are to overcome the forces of opposition against us. Okay, and then you're like, okay, well, what about the atonement? Does that really matter? Well, so again, you got to really kind of dial back the whole, when you start allegorizing things. Now, there are points in the Bible that are clearly allegory. Some of the parables are allegorical in a sense, okay? But another way to look at this is that it's a drama. It's a theater piece, okay? That it's supposed to be read. It's supposed to be performed, okay? And this is being part of the wisdom literature tradition that sometimes is looked at. Okay, same thing with Job. Some people think that Job is a theater piece, that Job didn't actually happen. It's actually just written as to be performed, to be read in front of people, kind of thing. So that's it. Another thought is it's all the recording of a dream. Okay, it's all a dream. Now there are elements in the story where there are clearly dreams talked about. But some have said, no, this is just the ruminations in someone's head. Okay, to me that's like the weakest of them. But I think to me, the best explanation of what the Song of Solomon is, or Song of Solomon is what it was called in the King James. So I would keep, Song of Songs is the more accurate name. But to me, it's a love story with symbolic application. Okay? It is, at the end of the day, just an old-fashioned love song. As you will notice, that's my title for today. Just an old-fashioned love song, one I'm sure they wrote for you and me, coming down in 3-part harmony and yada, 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 et cetera, okay? So to me, it's a love story. And we can look at it, we can see there are ways that you can apply this. You can look at these examples and you can say, wow, this is a great illustration of this. And again, it's a great illustration of the romantic love between two people. Okay? Which leads me to the next question. Well, who are the main characters? Now, there's a couple of different ways to look at this. And part of this goes into whether or not you believe that it's a drama piece or it's just a love story. Okay, so again, the question is are there two main characters, or are there three? These are all kind of questions that help make sense of it. Okay, so one idea is there are two main characters. There's the shepherd and his beloved. There's the shepherd and his beloved. Okay, man and a woman. Okay, and you'll notice, and I'm skipping down here a little bit, if you have an NIV. The NIV will tell you, it'll say she, friends, she, friend, these are different, identify who's talking, okay? And that's based on the verb tenses, because in the Hebrew, if a woman is talking, the verb tense is different than if a man is talking, okay? Insert your patriarchy joke here. I'm not going to do it, okay, because I'm outnumbered, and I'm not that stupid. No, I'm just kidding. But that's where that comes in. And even then, it's not that clear. And again, Song of Solomon has the same problem that Ecclesiastes did, in that there's not a lot of vocabulary that's used in other places. So there's a lot of tendency to say, well, we think this might mean that, or that might mean this. And any two translations are going to give you vastly different ideas, okay? So there are two main characters, okay? And usually one variation on that is it isn't a shepherd and a woman, it's Solomon and the shepherd. And it's Solomon every time you see he, That's Solomon talking. Okay, and that has been kind of the traditional way of looking at the story for the last 100 or so years. I think within conservative evangelicalism, Western, we look at Song of Songs and we think, okay, it's the story of Solomon and his bride. Okay, and again, you kind of have to go, well, which bride is this? Is this number 316? Is this number 7? Is this number 699? Or when he hit 700, is that when he figured that's the perfect one? I found the one. Did he go back to his counselors at number 700 and say, I'm in love, and this time it's for real? Yeah, I don't know, but that's why I have a hard time picturing Solomon as being this great, this great romantic. Think, well, how did he get 700 wives? Because he was the king and had a lot of money, and they didn't have a whole lot of choice, kind of thing. So there are two. So there are three. So there are two, shepherd and his beloved, or there are three. There's a man, the shepherd, his beloved, the woman, and there's King Solomon. Okay. King Solomon appears as a third person in this. He's like the third wheel in this whole story. Okay, and I think to me that's my favorite way of looking at it. That there are three. That there's the man, there's the woman, and then there's Solomon. He's the third party in that. Okay, there are also assorted friends, women. They're also assorted friends, women, daughters of Jerusalem. In there. They are referred to several times throughout the book. The bottom line to me, in terms of looking at this, what's it about, is that it's a love story about a girl, a boy, and the king who wants to marry the girl. Okay? So to me, that's what it's about. And it's talking about the affection between these two and the king who gets in between them. Now, that's my preference. Okay, others think differently, and you can think differently yourself. But when you start with that approach, that's one way to explain the story as we go through it. Okay, and I said here the NIV notes that she and he are based on the Hebrew verb tenses in there. So, all right. Well, I'm just going to kind of race through this. I'm going to try. I'm going to get through 8 chapters in 25 minutes. Ready? All right, buckle up. Here we go. Solomon's Song of Songs. This is the woman speaking. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Now, the point here is to kind of think, as you think about who is speaking, then you have to ask yourself, well, who is he or she speaking about? Okay, so to me, she's talking about her lover. Okay, so you have the two lovers. Okay, so the man and the woman. Okay. For your love is more delightful than wine. Okay, so keep that thought in your head. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Your name is like a perfume poured out. No wonder the young women love you. Take me away with you. Let us hurry. Let the king bring me into his chambers. Now here, this, again, let the king take me into his chambers. If you believe that Solomon is the other person, it's a two character, then you say, well, she's talking about Solomon. Okay, except for the fact that the let the king take me into his chambers could be viewed as, before the king takes. Again, we're looking at this real questionable how, because the king is going to, or maybe she's given up, that her lover isn't going to appear, and so I might as well give up and let the king take her away. The friends, we rejoice and delight with you. We will praise your love more than wine. Okay. She, how right they are to adore you. Dark am I, yet lovely, daughters of Jerusalem. Dark like the tents of Kedar, like the tent curtains of Solomon. Okay. Now, when you say dark am I, yet lovely, she isn't. Here. The woman is dark, and we're going to find out here. She isn't racially dark. Now, she might be. Don't get me wrong. She might be African American. Well, she wouldn't be African American. She would be African Israeli, I guess. But she could be of African descent, but it's not likely. Okay, it's likely she's dark because she's suntanned. Okay, because look at what this text says. Do not stare at me because I am dark, because I am darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me, that is her brothers, were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I had to neglect. Okay, so basically her brothers sent her out to work in the vineyard and said, get out there and do this work. And as a result, she's suntanned. She's sunburned, whatever. Now there are a lot of, you look at this, and one of the things about Song of Songs is there's a lot of symbolic language. There's a lot of things where you could look at it and say, okay, is she talking about this? Is she talking about that? And if you want to go, everything is all sensual, you can. That's one way to look at it. Another way you say, because here what she says, I was not my own vineyard, I had to neglect. So I was taking care of others' possessions, my own self, my own body, I was not able to take care of. Hence, being sunburned, being suntanned at this time was not necessarily considered a great thing of beauty. And this was true for many, many years, centuries. It's only within the last 50, 60 years where to be suntanned was to be a good thing. There's in Pride and Prejudice, if you've ever read Pride and Prejudice, there's a scene where early in the book where Elizabeth Bennet walks from her house to Bingley's house. I'm a Janeite, by the way, in case you did not know that. I've read Pride and Prejudice multiple times. Love that book. But she walks from her house to Bingley's house, which is where her sick sister is, through the machinations of her mother. That's a whole other thing. But one of the criticisms that the that Bingley's sisters have of her, now Pride and Prejudice is written in the early 19th century, was that she looks like she's been out in the sun. How can she appear if she looks like she's been out in the sun? This is a bad thing. Okay, so it's only recently where it's like, oh yeah, to be tanned is a great thing. Of course, now we've got melanoma and all of that, and maybe we should go back to all being pale. I'm kind of like pale. Pale is good, but be that as it may. So, my mother's sons were angry with me. Tell me, you whom I love. Now she's speaking to her lover, or in absentia. She's kind of just asking. I think this is a rhetorical question, and her friends are there listening to her. Tell me, you whom I love, where you graze your flock and where you rest your sheep at midday. Okay, where are you? Where can I find you? Why should I be like a veiled woman beside the flock of your friends? Why should I be hidden? And her friends answer her in verse 8, if you do not know, most beautiful woman, follow the tracks of the sheep and graze your young goats by the tents of the shepherd. So the friends know where he is. He's a shepherd. Follow the tracks of the sheep. Where are you going to find the shepherd? Well, find the sheep, and the shepherd's going to be somewhere in the area. Okay, by the tents of the sheep. Now in verse 9, here comes the shepherd. He's going to start talking. I liken you, my darling, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariot horses. Okay. Now, what's interesting about this story and between the two is you have this. There's an equality between the two, that they just keep going back and forth. You're beautiful to me like this. You're handsome to me like this. That there's sort of like a one-upmanship between the two as far as how they can praise each other, kind of thing, and just kind of coming up with new, different ways. And I think, one lesson there is like, if you're in a relationship, if you're coming up with new ways to say nice things about your significant other, that's certainly a good thing. Now, I have not gotten to the point in my personal relationship where comparing my wife to a horse is seen as good. Okay. I've tried a couple of times. I've worked on it. How you practice? My dear, you remind me of the finest racehorse in the world. I don't know. It just doesn't click. It doesn't flow yet. I don't know. Maybe some point I'll work on it. But he goes on, and again, both of them praise the other. And I think that's one of the interesting things about this, that they both spend a great deal of time praising each other, pointing out what they think are their good points. Okay, And I think that's kind of an interesting, that's a great takeaway. It's a lot, it's very easy to point out the flaws in other people. Okay, and I think we kind of get used to that, or we kind of think, well, I'm here to fix you. And, that's why I married you. That's why your mother gave me to you, to fix you, kind of thing. But be that as it may, and so that's one of the characteristics you can see here. Your cheeks are beautiful with earrings, your neck with strings of jewels. We will make you earrings of gold, studded with silver. While the king was, now she talks, while the king was at his table, my perfume spread its fragrance. My beloved to me is a sachet of myrrh resting between my breasts. My beloved is to me a cluster of henna blossoms from the vineyards of En-Gedi. Okay, and this is just sort of like, again, you can go into each one of these different things and look at the symbolic. I think the point is that they're just coming up with different ways to praise each other. How beautiful verse 15, how beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. Your eyes are doves. How handsome are you, my beloved, she says. Oh, how charming, and our bed is verdant. Okay. Now this suggests, verse 16, this verse 16 suggests that these two are an item. Okay, that these two have gotten together, perhaps they're married. Again, it's like, we look at this, perhaps they've consummated their relationship. We look at marriage and we tend to kind of look at it from our perspective and say, okay, well, did they get the marriage license? Did they go before the justice of the peace? Did they do all, And to a certain extent, there were ceremonies involved in marriage. And to others, it was just sort of like, you know what? You, her, there, go. That was it, that there wasn't necessarily the ceremony or the lead up. It was just sort of okay, the beams of our house are cedars, our rafters are firs. Okay. Chapter 2, she says, I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valley. Okay, so again, these are actual flowers. The lily of the valley is actually considered is important in folk medicine. So there's health benefits to that. I don't know if she's, and of course there's a song. She's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul, kind of thing. And there's a couple of other phrases in Song of Solomon where, in Song of Songs, where if you know your old hymns, your old songs, you'll say, oh, that's where that comes from. Kind of thing. But she says, I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. And then he says, like a lily among thorns is my darling among the young women. So he picks up on her thing and says, you're better than just a lily of the valley. You're like among everyone around you is a thorn, and you are a lily among the thorns. She says, like an apple tree among the trees of the forest is my beloved among the young men. I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my taste. Let him lead me to the banquet hall, and let his banner over me be love. Has anybody ever heard the song, Jesus is the rock of my salvation, his banner over me is love? Kind of thing. Let him lead me. Now here we're thinking she's looking forward to a wedding ceremony, perhaps. And again, if you think it's Solomon, then that's what she's talking about. If you think it's a two-person story, then it's Solomon. Okay? Then verse 5, it's still the woman talking. Strengthen me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am faint with love. His left arm is under my head, and his right arm embraces me. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Okay. Now this is an interesting phrase because it's repeated 3 times. Do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Okay. And what's interesting is, some have looked at this, and especially if you're using Song of Solomon, Song of Songs to teach dating, which has been done. Not that I don't know that that's the best approach to using the Song of Songs, but some will look at this passage and say, see, this is like, when it comes to dating, don't start something you don't want to finish. Okay, and I think that's a good principle. Certainly, don't start something you don't want to finish. Just in general, in life, don't start something you don't want to finish, kind of thing. But a couple of different ways to look at that particular phrase is, if you think about it as the story is a dream, one of the reasons why people think that this is a dream, this is the story of a dream, is this repeated, don't wake me up. I'm enjoying my dream, don't wake me up. Have you ever woken up from a dream and are really sad that you woke up because you were enjoying the dream kind of thing? You know, it's like, wow, that was, or not so much that you were enjoying the dream, but you just want to know, did I make it off the cliff? Kind of thing, sort of, you know. But or another idea, you know, she do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. She could be saying, don't do what I did. She's telling this story to the daughters of Jerusalem, and she's recounting, don't do what I did. If you look at it as here, she's in love with this shepherd, but suddenly she's pulled out by the king that I want to marry you. Now suddenly she's in between, she's got the king, and she doesn't have the agency in Middle Eastern days. You didn't have the agency to say, listen, I don't want to marry the king. You didn't have that choice. The king said, I'm going to marry you. That was it. You know, and now suddenly you've got this shepherd that she's in love with, and she's like, you know, I should have just, you know. So again, we don't really know. It's interesting, and one of the things that, and it's on the back of your, if you notice your back, there's two songs on the back of your book. One of them is a song on the right-hand side. It's the song "Arise My Love." These are both by Michael Card. Michael Card wrote a song about Song of Solomon. It's called "Arise My Love," which is significant for us because that was a song that we had sung at our wedding. If you've never heard the song, I highly recommend you Google it, go to YouTube. There's variations of it. And he did an amazing job pulling phrases out of Song of Solomon to write this very beautiful love song. And one of the phrases in there is, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires, kind of thing. So that's kind of a great song there. So listen, the woman is still talking. My beloved, look, here he comes, leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. He's going out of his way to find her. He's eager to get to her, eager to be by her side. Okay, and I think one of the things that you see in the Song of here in the Song of Songs is that these two enjoy each other's presence. Okay, and that, to me, I think one of the principles that you can draw from Song of Solomon is, you say, you know, what is an aspect of love? It's like you enjoy each other's presence. You just enjoy being around each other. That this is, you know, who do you really want to be by? Okay, who do you know, if you're going to sit somewhere, do you want to sit on, you know, somewhere else, or you know, it was interesting that we, you know, when you know, we have two sons, and to the best of my knowledge, and we have, you know, had we had three, I don't know, it may have been different. But as far as I know, neither of our sons ever sat between us. You know, like when in church or anything like that, they never sat between us, right? Have I? Yeah, never sat between us. Like we would put one on one side and one on the other, or two on one side or two on the other, but never in between us. Because it's like, you know, you think, you're going away someday, so you're going to move out on me. She's not. Okay, you know. But be that as, you know, you just enjoy each other's presence. Okay, and here he's leaping like a gazelle. He's anxious to get by her. And then of course, my beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Look, there he stands behind our wall, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice. Okay. Now again, if Solomon is the other guy, this doesn't sound like a very kingly thing to do. Okay. You know, my beloved is like a gazelle. Look, there he stands behind our wall. He's behind the wall. He's being shy. You know, he's like, you know, well, you're the king. If you're Solomon, you're like, hey, I own this place. You know, you're mine. Come on, let's go. Sort of, you know. And of course, my beloved spoke and said to me, and this is like the main text of the song, the mic, arise, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. See, the winter is past, the rains are over and gone. Flowers appear in the earth. The season of singing has come. You know, interesting because I've been talking about Song of Solomon, or thinking about it and reading about it for the last 2 weeks or so. You know, this song has been like rattling through my head over and over and over again. The cooing of doves is heard on our land. The fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragrance. This is all, arise, come, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. Okay, so again, it's just like he's coming for her. He's eager for her company. He asks her to come along with. He gives her agency to decide, do I want to come, do I don't want to come? She doesn't have to, come with me. And to her, this is all elements of spring. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. My dove, says he in verse 14, my dove in the clefts of the rock, in the hiding places of the mountainside, show me your face, let me hear your voice. For your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards that are in bloom. My beloved is mine and I am his. He browses among the lilies. Okay, so again, he's back to the reference to the lilies. Until the day breaks and the shadows flee, turn, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or like a young stag on the rugged hills. Okay, now, chapter 3, beginning of chapter 3, we have the first 5 verses. This is kind of a shift here. The first 5 verses are possibly a dream. The woman, so again, if the whole book isn't a dream, 1 through 5 might be a dream. It's the woman is talking, and she says, all night long on my bed, I looked for the one my heart loves. I looked for him, but did not find him. I will get up now and go about the city through its streets and squares. I will search for the one my heart loves. So I looked for him, but did not find him. The watchmen found me as they made their rounds in the city. Have you seen the one my heart loves? Scarcely had I passed them when I found the one my heart loves. I held him and would not let him go till I had brought him to my mother's house, to the room of the one who conceived me, to my mother's bedroom, or to my parents' bedroom. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Okay, again, don't wake me up, or don't do it. Don't get in the position that I was in, kind of thing. One way to look at this, and he said he found her. And again, this is the weirdness of it. It's like, okay, you're looking for your guy, you go out, you find him, you grab him, and you bring him to your mother's house. This is why, it doesn't quite fit in with the rest of the story, which makes you think it's a dream. Now, it could have been real. But in verse 6, it kind of switches, and now we suddenly start talking about Solomon more directly. Who is this coming up from the wilderness like a column of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and incense, made from all the spices of the merchant? Look, it is Solomon's carriage, escorted by 60 warriors, the noblest of all Israel. All of them wearing the sword, all experienced in battle, each with his sword at his side, prepared for the terrors of the night. King Solomon made for himself the carriage. He made it of wood from Lebanon. Its posts he made of silver, its base made of gold, its seat was upholstered with purple, its interior inlaid with love. Okay, so here again, if Solomon is the one, then this is Solomon coming for his bride. Okay, and it is. It's a wedding procession. It's a marriage procession, and the question is the woman looking forward to this or not? Okay, well, she loves the shepherd, not necessarily Solomon. Now, to me, the Solomon and the shepherd are not the same person. But if they're the same person, well then, there you go. Daughters of Jerusalem, come out and look, you daughters of Zion. Look on King Solomon wearing a crown, the crown with which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding, the day his heart rejoiced. Okay. Now he speaks. Now again, this is, to me, this is the shepherd. How beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. Your eyes behind your veil are doves. Your hair is like a flock of goats descending from the hills of Gilead. Again, haven't gotten to the point where I can compare my wife to a goat. I'm working on that one, though. I'm going to just, it's in the Bible, dear. See if that works. Now, in verse 2 here, chapter 4, verse 2, this is like my favorite compliment in the book. I don't know why. Just something about this makes me laugh. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep just shorn, coming up from the washing. Each has its twin. Not one of them is alone. Okay, so you know what else I love about you? You have all your teeth.
And they're white.
Yeah. That is so, so it's like, what first, there's a Shakespeare play where two of the actors, a man and a woman, are tricked into loving each other, realizing that they always loved each other, but they have a discussion, at near the end of the play. It's like, for which of my good qualities didst thou love me first? And I want to have that conversation with my wife someday, hint, hint, so I can say, actually, it was your teeth. Your teeth. It was your teeth kind of thing, because you had them all. It was like, it appeared like you had them all, which is more, because I don't have all my teeth. I had the wisdom teeth taken out, so technically I don't have all my teeth. So, do you have your wisdom teeth? Do you? Not all of them. Now she tells me. Now, 31 years later, I find out.
A couple white teeth either.
Yeah. Your lips are like a scarlet ribbon. Your mouth is lovely. Your temples behind your veil are like again, here he's just praising her, coming up with different ways. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built with the courses of stone. On it hang 1,000 shields, all of them shields of warriors. Your breasts are like two fawns, like twin fawns of a gazelle that browse among the lilies. Until the day breaks and the shadows flee, I will go to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of incense. Now, this is something I've often said about my wife. You are altogether beautiful, my darling. There is no flaw in you. And, that's the secret. The secret to success in marriage, coming from my opinion, is that if you can say that to your spouse and believe it, you are golden. There is no flaw in you. Okay? Unfortunately, she can't say that about me, as I'm sure you will all. Well, if she's missing some, I can suggest a few for you. But no, I'm just, you are altogether beautiful. It's like there is no flaw in you. He sees the good in her. He sees all that is good and overlooks what some might consider a flaw. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon. Descend from the crest of Amanah, from the top of Sinner, the summit of Hermon, from the lion's den and the mountain haunts of leopards. You have stolen my heart, my sister, my bride. Okay, you have stolen my heart. Okay, now see, that's what Debbie did to me. I mean, she stole my heart right away. It was love at first sight for me. I'm like, I had the wedding planned and everything between the hello, my name is Stan. It was all planned out. Now, she took a little longer to get on board with the plan. It took me about, 18 seconds to get on board with the plan. It took her more like 18 months. But I got her, eventually. Right there. That's how it went? Yeah, something like that. Yes. How beautiful, how delightful is your love, my sister, my bride. How much more pleasing is your love than wine. Now, what's interesting here, this is the guy talking about her. How much more pleasing is your love than wine, which is exactly what she said in verse 2, chapter 1, verse 2, about him, that your love is more pleasing than wine. And the fragrance of your perfume more than any spice. Your lips drop sweetness as the honeycomb, my bride. Milk and honey are under your tongue. The fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. You are a garden locked up, my sister, my bride. You are a spring enclosed, a sealed fountain. Your plants are an orchard of pomegranates with choice fruits, with henna and nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon. Most of these are, very pleasant smelling, bring, great feelings and sensations to you. With every kind of incense tree, with myrrh and aloes and all the finest spices. You are a garden fountain, a well of flowing water streaming down from Lebanon. She responds in verse 16, awake, north wind, and come, south wind, blow on my garden that its fragrance may spread everywhere. Let my beloved come into his garden and taste its choice fruit. Again, he has just described her in all of these gardening terms, and she's like, well, here, I'm all yours, kind of thing, Debbie says that kind of stuff to me all the time. Come into my garden, come into my garden. Except I've known that usually when she's saying that, it's because she wants me to pull a weed tree or she wants me to fix something in the garden. So I'm not falling for that again. I'm kidding, dear. I have come into the garden, my sister, my bride. I have, chapter 5, verse 1. I have gathered my myrrh with my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb and my honey. I have drunk my wine and my milk. Eat, friends, and drink. Drink your fill of love. This is the friend speaking. Now, verse 2, we do have it. This is a dream. 2 through 8, this is a dream. I slept, but my heart was awake. Okay, there you go. I'm sleeping, but my heart is awake. Listen, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my flawless one. So that in the dream, the guy is at the door. My head is drenched with dew, my hair with the dampness of the night. I have taken off my robe. Must I put it on again? I have washed my feet. Must I soil them again? My beloved thrust his hand through the latch opening. My heart began to pound for him. I arose to open for my beloved, and my hands dripped with myrrh, my fingers with flowing myrrh on the handles of the boat. I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had left. He was gone. So he's at the door. She gets up to go, finally gets up to get him, and she opens the door, and he's gone. I looked for him but did not find him. I called for him but he did not answer. So apparently she gets up to go look for him. The watchman found me. These are the same watchmen as the dream in chapter 3. The watchmen found me as they made their rounds in the city. They beat me. They bruised me. They took away my cloak, these watchmen of the walls. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, if you find my beloved, what will you tell him? Tell him I am faint with love. Okay? How is your, and then in verse 9, after, she tells him this dream, and she goes, well, what makes your guy so great? He's really, how is your beloved better than others? Verse 9. How is your beloved better than others, most beautiful woman? How is your beloved better than others that you so charge us? What is so great about this guy? Now, some of you may have had a situation where somebody you know is new in a new relationship, and he or she is describing this guy to you, or this person to you. And usually you'll say, well, what's so great about this guy? Well, does he have all his teeth? Okay, we know that that's a biblical thing. All of your teeth. Are they white? Okay. But what is so great about him? And now she's going to describe what is so great about this guy. My beloved, and this is actually almost exactly how Debbie describes me. Just saying. My beloved is radiant and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000. His hair is purest gold. His hair is wavy and black as a raven. His eyes are like doves by the water streams, washed in milk, mounted like jewels. His cheeks are like beds of spices, yielding perfume. His lips are like lilies dripping with myrrh. His arms are rods of gold set with topaz. His body is like polished ivory, decorated with lapis lazuli. His legs are pillars of marble set on bases of pure gold. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as its cedars. His mouth is sweetness itself. He is altogether lovely. Again, this is how Debbie describes me. Right? You probably asked her, what's Stan like? And she'll just quote this particular passage. But to me, one of the great phrases, or one of the great verses here is this next one, as she's describing it. This is my beloved, this is my friend, daughters of Jerusalem. So, to me, it's like this is the best description of her. This is my beloved, this is my friend. And I think about that as like, if your significant other isn't your friend, then you're, to me, again, I'm not a marriage counselor, but to me, you've got issues. If they're not your friend, that's it. And there's another song on the back of your book. It's just another Michael Card song, a song called Home. And I just thought about it, and it's a great song, but there's a line in there where he says, home is where someone is waiting. This is the third stanza. Home is where someone is waiting and loving and happy to see you again. That half of your heart that somebody else treasures, the one who's your forever friend. So it's like, if you're not friends with your spouse, you're in trouble. To me, it's like, who would you, if somebody gives an opportunity to do something with you, and again, we don't need to get all codependent on each other here, but it's like, who would you want to go somewhere with? You want to do this? Well, how can I do that with my wife? Or how can I do that with my significant other? Kind of thing, So yeah, this is my beloved. This is my beloved. This is my friend. Where has your beloved gone, most beautiful woman? Now that you've described him that way, chapter 6, verse 1, where is your beloved gone, most beautiful woman? Which way did your beloved turn that we may look for him? My beloved, verse 2, my beloved has gone down to his garden, to the beds of his spices, to browse in the gardens and to gather the lilies. And verse 3, I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. Which some people are really excited about the Sunday morning service out there. 6:3, I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. Okay, and this is a very important verse for us, for the Stan and Debbie universe, because this verse, I am my beloved's or I am my love's, is actually engraved. Can't get my ring off now. If you can see it from here, it's actually Song of Solomon 6:3 is engraved inside of our wedding rings. Okay, so again, we were big on Song of Solomon when we got married. So it's like it says, I am my love's. It's inside of mine, and it's the inside of hers as well. So this is how I know it's her. If she's disguised, I say, well, let me see your ring. And I look on the inside of just kidding. But this is Song of Solomon 6:3. I am my love's, my beloved is mine. Okay, lest anybody know Who am I? I am my love's, my beloved is mine. You are as beautiful, again, verse 4, you are as beautiful as Tizamar, darling, as lovely as Jerusalem, as majestic as troops with banners. My dear, you remind me of an army marching down a hill. Okay, yeah, again. Turn your eyes from me that overwhelm me. Your hair is like a flock of goats descending from Gilead. There it is. Now again, here, verse 6. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep coming up from the washing. Each has its twin. Almost exactly what he said before. Again, he's fixated on the teeth. So again, so good dentistry is biblical. It's right here. All right? So Dr. Matus in our, we've got a dentist in our church. This is probably on his wall in his office. Your temples behind your veil. 60 queens there may be, and 80 concubines, and virgins beyond numbers. But my dove, he's talking here. My dove, my perfect one, is unique, the only daughter of her mother, the favorite of the one who bore her. The young women saw her and called her blessed. The queens and concubines praised her. Now, this kind of suggests that the woman has been brought into the harem. That, again, remember it said she's got this relationship with the shepherd, but the king has married her, and now he's describing her. She's the most beautiful in the harem, kind of things. Who is it that appears like the dawn, fair as the moon, as bright as the sun, majestic as the stars' procession? I went down, he says, I went down to the grove of nut trees to look at the new growth in the valley. Before I realized that my desire set me among the royal chariots of my people. Okay, we're getting on to the end, and I gotta wrap it up here. One of the things, the last thing I want to talk about here, in chapter 7, beginning with verse 9, he ends up talking in your mouth like the best wine, and then the 9b, may the wine go straight to my beloved, flowing gently over lips and teeth. And then she says, I belong to my beloved, and his desire is for me. And this is an intriguing passage here, because that word desire there, and this is the last thing I'll talk about today, that word desire there is only used 3 times in the Old Testament. Okay, well, it's in the Bible. Okay, the first time that word is used, that Hebrew word is used, is in Genesis 3, when the curse is being given to the woman. And he says, part of the curse is that your desire will be for your husband. Okay, and then in Genesis 4, when Cain is being punished, and God says to Cain, he says, your sin is lying at your door and it desires you. The word is used a second time. And now in Song of Solomon 7:10, as she is describing his desire, she uses that same verse. She uses that same Hebrew word. Now, it could be that it's a coincidence. It could be that it's a coincidence. But another idea is to look at this idea of love as pictured in Song of Solomon, a love where it's mutually energetic, it's mutually fulfilling, that both sides are actively pursuing each other, both sides seek the better in each other, that both sides are each other's forever friend, that this love portrayed here in Song of Solomon is one way to put it is a reverse of the curse. That this is how the love was supposed to be. This is how the relationship was supposed to be. That it wasn't where the one was dominant over the other. That it wasn't a patriarchal disaster. I was reading on Twitter this morning different examples of, I don't know why I do this to myself, but because it's fun, where women were talking about the various ways that their significant others had belittled them. And we, the men folk of the universe are really good at this kind of thing. To our shame, no doubt. Just not using the name or insulting them in public or that kind of stuff. That's not how it's supposed to be. Okay? And I think Song of Solomon gives us this picture and says, look, this is what it was supposed to be. This desire that you have, that was supposed to be a mutual desire between each other. That you're forever friends with your significant other. It isn't, it's only a few verses after the curse happens where suddenly you find out about, you see Lamech, who suddenly has 2 wives. And yeah, it was tolerated, but it's like, I don't think that was originally, it wasn't Eve 1 and Eve 2. It was Adam and Eve. It was supposed to be 1 and 1. It was supposed, so again, and this was supposed to be a relationship entered into on a long-term basis for each other. I could go on, again, getting to the end. The thing is, the interesting thing at the end is he talks about love is as strong as death. The last thing we talk about, love is as strong as death. So that this is how it was supposed to be. One way to look at that is it could be the way we're obsessed with death. We are, whether we like to admit it or not. We're obsessed with our obsession, or we're obsessed in our non-obsession. Oh, I never think about it. Yeah, you do. You're thinking about it now, kind of thing. Should be how we obsess over our love, not the absence of it. Like, I got to go find someone and marry the first guy or girl that comes along, kind of thing. But it's inevitable that if you are in society, if you are acting the way that if you are acting the way God wants you to act, then it's inevitable that you will find love at some point. Okay, and again, I think there's all kinds of good lessons you can talk about. In this book here, 3 Philosophies of Life, where he talks about love, he just kind of gives like 26 different examples of love. Love is kind, love is sacrificial, love, all of these different ways that are illustrated by that. So, all right, well, listen, I've gone over time, so I apologize for that. Again, I highly recommend Arise, My Love. My love comes, the winter is past, and the rains are gone. Again, whenever that song, we hear that song, we have to stop and, wedding song, kind of thing. That and Joy in the Journey and Household of Faith. Those are the 3 songs at our wedding. Any questions? Anything else on Song of Songs? So you're going to go home and tell your husband, boy, did I learn some things.
Yes.
You got some work to do. No, I'm just kidding. You would never do that kind of thing. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. And if you have not signed up for one of those, go to one of the afternoon focus groups. The church and the leadership would greatly appreciate it. All right. Thank you much. See you next week.